Hi, it's Mark Owen from Moose Marketing and PR, the editor of Punchline magazine, and welcome to Punchline Talks, the business breakfast briefers, where each week I invite a panel of experts to talk about the local newspapers, talk about what's happening in the national newspapers, talk about what's happening in their own individual business and their own individual business sectors, and finally, what's caught their eye in this week's Punchline. So let me introduce you to the panel. And before I do, I'd just like to thank our fantastic sponsors, Hazelwood's Accountants and Business Advisors. Couldn't do the show without them. Anyway, let's meet the panel. Today we have Ollie Christie, CEO of Neon Play. They're the company that came up with Flick Football. It was so popular, it actually was above Angry Birds. They have 170 million free downloads. Absolutely amazing. Great to see you. You've got 25 staff based in Cirencester with turnover around £6 and £7 million. We've also got Gwilliam, leader of the Forest of Dean District Council. They've just launched their local strategic plan with a proposal to turn Lydney into a gateway for the Forest of Dean. So we look forward to hearing about that. We've got Stuart Langworthy. He is the England of the over 60s walking football manager. And do you know there are over 140,000 people now playing walking football? So we'll find about that a little bit later. And also, last not least, we've got the fantastic Ruth Dooley, chairperson of the G1st LEP and a partner of Hazelwood's Accountants and Business Advisors. She's also on the board of the Western Gateway. Thank you ever so much, everybody, for joining this morning. We're just going to quickly have a look at the newspapers. So I'll go over to courtesy of the BBC. Okay, let's just run through the titles. The Daily Express, BBC, we let Diana down. The Metro, BBC, we let Diana down. The Mirror, cops must now charge the culprits. The Daily Star, royal shame, BBC, we let Diana down. The Daily Telegraph, no tax cuts until late next year, says Sunak. The Times, Trust and Sunak trade blows over tax pledges. The Guardian, Sunak goes on attack over tax as Trust takes poll lead. The Eye, mordant revenge, new plot to stop Trust. The Financial Times, ECB vows to avert debt crisis as it lifts rates for the first time since 2011. The Daily Mail, Channel migrants landed in Britain with guns. The Sun, Jade Sun joins Enders. And that's the look of the papers this morning. Okay, who should we start with? Let's start with you, Ruth. Welcome to Punchline Talks. What have you picked out?
Well, I picked out the story about the ECB raising interest rates for the first time in a decade. I mean, that's a long time for interest rates to stay fixed. And they actually went up half a basis point. The commentators were expecting it to be a quarter of a basis point, but a whole half that point was considered to be quite sort of dramatic, really. I feel very sorry for those who have to make these decisions because it's an incredibly difficult thing to try and balance. You don't want to push them up too high because that will could push you into a recession. On the other hand, inflation does need to be tamed. In the Eurozone, it's climbed to 8.6% because of gas prices and food prices. But as we know, in the UK, it's closing on 10%. So it is a problem and it's got to be addressed. Inflation is something that can be tackled with interest rates. It's only one of the toolkit. But that balancing act is I think it's more, in my view, it's more difficult than it's ever been. I can't remember when it's been so difficult to try and get that balance right between promoting the economy but not creating a recession. It's incredibly difficult, and I don't envy them. We all live in what they say interesting times.
Interesting times, and it's funny. The story of one of the Times is the fact that the balance of payments have shot through the roof as well as obviously as interest rates have gone up. Let's be honest, the country's broke. And I love the election. I love the election that people have promised all sorts of things. I mean, who's going to really pay for it? Just very quickly, Ollie, what's your view on that?
Well, the magic money tree seems to have just gone nuts over lockdown with the spending on everything, COVID related in particular. But I think there needs to be a degree of fiscal responsibility that there's that balance of tax and spend. But I don't envy Sunak or Trust, to be honest, because it's going to be an impossible job whenever they get it with the war in Ukraine, with the cost of living, interest rates, it's very, very, very tough times ahead, and we need to slightly buckle down, I think.
And also, let's be honest, COVID's not over. It's still going on. It's rampant. I've had so many friends of ours who have got it really, really poorly. What about you, Tim? Obviously, the council.
Yeah, I come at it from almost a political point of view, but I think that some years ago I remember this term being used, quantitative easing, and I think that's when they produce more money. And the government own money because they borrow money from the Bank of England, who they own. So I suspect there's probably a more simplistic way of sorting this out. You're absolutely right about interest rates, and this is one of the things, and I guess this is the old-fashioned socialist in me. This continued push for home ownership, that's got to be the be-all and end-all for everybody. For me, it's not that. People should have the right to a decent home, whatever tenure it must be. This idea that you have to own your own home to be a decent member of society is complete piffle. And it becomes more of a problem when interest rates, who knows, we could be just months away from those interest rates of the 1980s. And how many people will be foreclosed then and stuff like that?
Well, that's a very nice link over to Stuart, actually, the 1980s.
Oh, thank you very much.
I got to get that in. Stuart, I mean, what's your take on it?
Well, we have created a sort of very selfish society in that people keep wanting more, and it's easy now. I'm retired, I suppose, that and with a mortgage paid off. But the more you hear about people wanting to go on strike to get higher wages, the more wage rises there are, the more inflation will keep on rising, and you'll be in that horrible cycle of things just spiraling out of control. So it is a worry. I do think we all have to buckle down. The 80s was horrible. Interest rates of 15% when we bought our first house, negative equity. But we've come through it, and we've come out the other side, and things have been pretty good. So I'm sure we'll come through it eventually. But it's I don't envy the person who has to take on this responsibility of trying to get us out the mire, really.
No, and we've never had, a whole generation of people have never had interest rates like that. Obviously, it's so much cheap money. Okay, Ollie, what have you picked out from the papers to us today? Thanks for that, Ruth.
I've got three short stories which have all got a slight relevance to work and home. First, actually, is Martin Sorrell's company S4 Capital. They halved in value in one day from 1.2 billion to 700 million. This is a story in Sun Business. I've been a Sun reader for 30 years. But what's interesting is that they say that the high staff costs are to be blamed for that slump. And it's interesting that we are seeing at work, we're looking to recruit at the moment, and we're being offered people by recruitment consultants on salaries which are 40% higher than their value, with their realistic value, with the experience they've had of 1 or 2 years. And it's just insane, and it's not sustainable. So I don't know where that's going to lead. It's obviously part of this.
Well, it's funny you should say that, Ollie, because talked to, again, a firm of solicitors, and they were saying that they are having people poached to go to London, and some of the crazy salaries they've been offered, and architects are the same. These people aren't actually worth that. They haven't got the experience for that.
Yeah, the other thing, Mark, is that we've lost a couple of people recently who've been offered London prices, but they're working from their house in Gloucester or wherever it might be. So they're getting the London weighted salary without actually having to leave their desks. And this is a real challenge for employers, is because everyone's now having to do the hybrid working and working from home. People are getting these amazing salary rises, and I don't blame them, by the way. If you can get it, I would. And if you're starting your career and going up the career ladder, but it's a real challenge for employers. So that's my first story. My second story is about all the chaos at airlines. And actually, last week we went to Spain, and we set our alarm at 3:30 in the morning, checked our email, and at 3:28, BA sent us an email saying, "Really sorry, your flight's cancelled." It was leaving in 5 hours' time. And we thought, oh, well, maybe that flight's been cancelled because, some of the air hostesses and stewards had got COVID. But actually, BA that day cancelled 10,000 people on the day. And what the CAA is saying is that they're harmful practices, and the airlines are not meeting their obligations. And I just can't believe that it is allowed that they can do that on the day. People would have been at the airport, because you've got to get to the airport 3 hours before these days, because it's utter chaos. And just getting the money back from BA is nearly impossible. They said we had to call, we didn't want to get, they offered us a flight from Gatwick 2 days later, which was just not practical for us. We ended up having to go to Manchester to fly to Gibraltar, which wasn't where our car was in Malaga. I mean, it's just complete chaos. But getting money out of BA, you had to call a hotline, but obviously there was no answer from the hotline because they had 10,000 people trying to do it. And it should be illegal, or the claiming and the refund should be much more doable. And it just beggars belief to me. My final story is a story in The Independent, that the Hilton hotel chain are looking to train their front of house staff, their waiters and waitresses, to take better photos of customers. And my daughter's actually starting her first job today in our local pub. And I just thought it was just really interesting that this is the reality of life, is that, you know, waiters and waitresses normally just serving and clearing, etc., etc. But, you know, for people's celebrations, wedding, anniversaries, birthdays, but you do want often a photo of your team, your family, your friends together. But I like the fact that they're just thinking a little bit laterally to what is the reality of life, and big brands do need to sort of focus on what is happening in the real world.
It's funny, I was at a bit of a food launching last night at the Native Kitchen, and I was one with Cotswold Life, actually, the editor of Cotswold Life. She was there as well. And when they brought the food out, all the influencers just like taking photographs. It was like crazy. Of course, but that's their job. That's their job. You're right. It's a different way of looking at it, isn't it? Well,
but Mark, it's a content-driven society, and you know, a good photo can drive clicks, which can drive revenue and increase your followers, and that's the reality of life, like it or not. So were these people naked? Were the waiters naked?
No, I sorry, I should have said native. I did. Native. It wasn't naked. It wasn't naked. I'm not sure I would have gone at being naked. I put a lot of people off their food anyway. Right. Tim, what have you picked out for us in the papers, please, or online?
Both my stories are actually on the front page of the Times today, and the first one again is a political one. This Truss and Sunak trade blows over tax pledges, and we're going to be in for 3 months of this, aren't we? This is going to go on and on and on. And for me, it just emphasizes the point, and the whole, and I'll say the debacle of this last fortnight. These two politicians, a month ago, were defending the guy that just been kicked out for whatever reason. It doesn't matter what your politics. The sheer duplicity of politics at national level, I think, is getting disgraceful. These two people were defending Boris Johnson. And we were promised there was going to be change. There's going to be change at the top. We know things have gone wrong. We're going to change. And actually, although not a Tory supporter, I was quite enthused by some of the people that were put forward as leadership. I didn't know some of them. There seemed to be some different ideas. And what have we ended up with? And what's worse, who's going to choose what we've ended up with? It ain't you or I, unless you're, you know, unless you're a member of the Conservative Party, you know, you're not going to choose. It's point three of the nation is going to choose our next prime minister. And I don't care whatever party you support and whatever system you support, that cannot be right. That just can't be right.
Well, I think it's quite funny. Sorry, Ollie, yes.
No, sorry, I was just going to say it would be interesting if, and I agree with you, Tim, that it's outrageous that the Tory party members just choose the prime minister of the country for the next 2 or 3 years. If the rules were that if you change prime minister, you had to go to the polls, would they elect, or would they put forward 2 different candidates for that final choose?
Yeah, absolutely right. Absolutely right.
And would they have got rid of Johnson in the first place?
Well, true. And like it or not, Johnson, he's an election-winning machine. He's obviously completely immoral and a liar, but it's, you know, he has been a phenomenal election winner in London mayoral and with the Conservative Party.
And I'll add, this isn't an anti-Tory rant, because let's be honest, the Labour Party were banging on about Johnson breaking the rules and having a fine and all that. Well, what are they saying about Sunak? He had a fine as well, and yet the Labour Party are quite happy to go along with this nonsense. Yeah. For me, it's just crazy, and something needs to be done.
I always thought it was going to end up with those two at the very beginning. I'm not surprised at all.
Okay. And the second story on the front of the Times is one, and it says causing offence isn't a crime, police told. And, we live in an age where, hate crime. I noticed in the week actually that there's an Arabic comedian that's on BBC. I forget his name. He's on BBC quite a lot. Arabic descent, and he made some comment about this. It was good to see that an Arab had brought a white man down or something. He did it on Twitter to do with Johnson and Sunak, and he got Al's pelted, reported to the police, one thing or another. And a couple of weeks ago, I know the comedian Joe Lycett got questioned by the police over a joke that he told on one of his. And it takes me back to the 80s and 90s again, when I used to remember there used to be a comedian who might still be going around, but called Chubby Brain. And basically, if you're an adult, you choose whether to go to see these people. I know he used to say on his tickets, used to say on his tickets, come and see me at your own risk. And we're getting that it's almost read papers and look at internet and look at social media at your own risk. It's getting ridiculous. I know there's a line, hate crime and hate speech has to be stamped out, but somebody telling the joke, but the police should have better things to do than go and interview them.
Well, it's funny you should say that. There's a massive report in one of the papers. Here we go. Actually, I think it's in our beloved Sun, Ollie, because I'm like you. I'm a big Sun fan, and it's 7 in 10 Met officers have not made a single arrest in the past year. The story is not much cop. I can't see it there, but anyway.
Because they're all going talking to the comedians about bad jokes they're telling.
Well, that's exactly it. That's exactly it. It's scandalous, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's not police time, it's also court time. I mean, the number of cases now that go through to court when you think, goodness me, they could have sorted that out with a pinch of common sense at the start. And of course, that absorbs court resources, and then the more important cases all get backed up, and people don't see justice for a very long time because it's all disproportionate, and there's too much fear of not acting. If you see what I mean.
No, totally agree. Come on in, Stuart. Let's have your newspapers, because already we're running slightly behind.
Okay. Well, I've got a couple of stories and a couple of headlines that caught my attention. The first one was in the Metro. I'm going to be very different with the ones that I'm going for. Metro, 9 million people roar on the Lionesses. Absolutely brilliant. For those who watched it the other day, the growth of the women's game in football is fantastic. The money that's now attracting, the women have now actually got women's fitted kits rather than an old men's kit that was too baggy for them. Taking the women's game seriously, it's brilliant. The money that it's bringing into the game. We're seeing something fairly similar in walking football, that the women's game in walking football is exploding. New clubs forming every day. Lots of women just taking part for the fun of it, which is fantastic. So I just think it's really, really good to see the women's game being taken much more seriously, and people watching it and commentating on it and commenting on it who would never have done so in the past. I think it's fantastic.
I think it's wonderful, because I played for the university when I was at college, and that is quite a long time ago. So it's taken its time, but thank goodness it's come at last.
And I hate to say it, the quality of the football, the Spanish team and the English team, it was a great game. It was just a great. I actually prefer the women's football than the chaps at the moment. It was just brilliant. Did you watch it as well, Ollie?
Yeah, and I thought the atmosphere was better than a men's game. It was really fervent, wasn't it? And as you said, the quality of that winning goal was stunning.
And lots of young people watching it as well, which is great. So you don't get the sort of hooligan element that you do at men's football. And yeah, it's just great to see. Really good to see.
Okay, last newspaper story then.
So second story, I've got to tell you a couple of headlines because they just caught my eye as well. This was in the Telegraph. COVID inquiry accused of sidelining children. I'm just wearing my teacher's hat now. There are so many kids, tends to be mainly teenage girls, who have been really affected by lockdown. There was a programme on TV the other night about the number of kids who are developing Tourette's and things like that. And this is going to affect the future workforce. There are so many kids now who are being homeschooled, who have got anxiety issues, excuse me, as a result of lockdown, lack of confidence, lack of social skills, and that's the future workforce. Already businesses are finding it difficult to fill vacancies, and you've got this whole generation of young people coming through who have been massively affected by COVID and lockdown, and they're not being looked into. This inquiry is saying that for the first year, they're not going to look at the impact on young people. And it's the young people who've been, I know old people have been affected health-wise, but let's look at, I know personally of 3 or 4 people who are now school refusers, haven't sat their GCSEs. They're lovely people, but they're just lacking in confidence and worried about the world because of lockdown. It bothers me. It really bothers me about the future for our workforce.
It's a ticking time bomb, isn't it? Let's be honest about it. It really is. Okay, well, thanks ever so much. I have to stop you there, Stuart. And,
no, Mark, no, I just got to tell you this one headline. It caught my eye. I just got this vision of people sat in an office coming up with these brilliant headlines. Out of the lying man and into the dyer. What a great headline. I just looked at it and it just made me laugh. You know, I don't do politics, but that just made me laugh. Out of the lying man and into the dyer. Brilliant headline.
Can I just pick up on the story you did before, Stuart, which is about, you know, the problems that kids have at school. I went to a very interesting talk about how preschool help for children is so incredibly important to help prevent the problems later on, and how as a country we really don't invest in the preschool support for kids and for families. There was something called early start, I can't remember what it was called now, but it's gone and very little has replaced it. If you compare us to, say, the Scandinavian countries, we're vastly underinvested in sort of nursery provision. And actually, in terms of what you can do to have an effect, if we can all lobby government for more preschool help for youngsters, then these problems get nipped in the bud, and actually you have a lot less of the problems later on. It's a real bangs for bucks, returns for money. It just makes total economic sense, and it makes human capital sense as well. All these kids having a proper chance in life.
I read somewhere that childcare is something like £14,000 a year or something for kids through nursery. It's absolutely crazy money for some people nowadays. It's not worth them going out to work. Thanks ever so much for that. Ruth, well, let's talk about your what's going on at Hazelwoods at the moment, because you deal with divorces, isn't it?
Well, I do expert witness work, and our forensic practice is growing. We've got a team of people who do all sorts of different things, but my particular focus is valuing businesses. Primary focus is valuing businesses for court purposes, and that can be divorce, it can be commercial disputes, and I also do professional negligence work in respect of tax advice primarily. So I have a sort of quite wide range of different types of expert work we do, but we're growing in the expert department. We're also growing across the firm, and that actually creates its problems because of recruiting. We're sort of expanding faster than we can recruit, and I think, you know, we share that problem with many other businesses across the county. We're taking on almost 50 trainees this year to try and sort of grow our own. We've been doing that policy for quite some time. It's great. It's obvious you do get the attractions of the bright lights. So, you know, you train people and then they come through, they qualify and they think, oh, I'll go and work in London now, which is to be expected, but still a little bit sort of galling, because that's actually our really difficult spot to recruit in, is sort of the newly qualified, the youngsters who have got a bit of money in their pocket and off they go. But that's a challenge. It's a challenge for the county as well, keeping those young people in the county, making Gloucestershire into a magnet county and trying to create the opportunities here so they don't want to go off to the bright lights of the city. Some will, and some will come back as soon as they've got their kids, because they want them to grow up in the countryside rather than the smog. But yeah, it's a challenge for all businesses, and it's a challenge for Hazelwoods too.
Just very quickly, because of COVID, have you seen a rise of people wanting to get out of the business, or, you know, selling their companies or getting divorced?
Well, certainly getting divorced. I think lockup sort of contributed to that in terms of bringing out the problems of marriages that maybe the cracks were there and they developed to a bit wider. Yes, we are seeing more divorce cases coming through, no doubt about it. As far as people selling their businesses, not really, not quite so much. I think that's people are sort of wanting to sort of retrench and grow. And actually that brings me on to sort of another hat, which is the G1st Chair hat, to talk to businesses out there that are looking to grow or looking for support. We've got growth hubs now in all 6 of the districts in Gloucestershire, and the growth hubs have supported over 4,000 local businesses. And if you look online, there are events there to help. And I've just looked up, because Tim's here, I've looked up what's going on in the Forest of Dean Growth Hub, and there are 3 workshops coming up. One is on health and safety and smarter HR, how to boost profits. Another one is on how to improve your sales approach. And the third one, which is just what we've been talking about, how to keep your staff engaged, retention, retention, retention. So if you're a business in the Forest of Dean or across the county, and you want to go to your local Growth Hub to get some business supports, they're all there waiting for you to walk through the door and say, give us some help.
Fantastic plug. Well, thanks ever so much for that, Ruth. Ollie, let's go over to you, please. We touched very, very briefly when we first introduced you. Neon Play, how long has it been going now? And tell us more about the business.
Yeah, so we're 12 years. We're based in Cirencester because I live nearby and I wanted to work near where I lived. And we've just grown organically, and we just come up with ideas for mobile games like these 2 you can see behind me here. And then we publish them on the App Store on Apple and on Google Play on Android phones. And we then try and market them and hope that they monetize. The challenge is that nearly all games these days are free, so everyone can download them for free. But we have to pay to get those free downloads. You don't really get many people you do get people who hear about a game through a friend and then they'll download it, but mostly we're having to acquire users, which will cost between 25 cents to $2 or $3 just to get one download. And then we have to then monetize that through advertising and in-app purchase. So we're just trying to find the next hit, really. It's really, really hard. We do a thing called hackathons every 2 or 3 months, where the whole team down tools for 2 days and they can make any game that they want. In fact, this game here was we had a guy on work experience from the University of Gloucestershire a few years ago, and that was his game. It was a game called Roller Splat, and it ended up getting 60 million downloads for a guy on work experience. It's been our biggest ever game. So you never know where it comes from, and that's why it's great that you get the creativity of everyone in the studio doing it.
And you also have this thing called, is it idle gaming, or what's that?
Yeah, it's a different genre of games. It's called Idle Tycoon games. And essentially, it's games where you're trying to earn as much money through upgrading. So we've got a game called Idle Army Base, where you need to train soldiers to go through all the different things that you need to do to become a soldier. And then they graduate, and then they go off to war. So every time they train to do some shooting or obstacle courses or parasailing out of a helicopter, they then earn more money, and you end up having hundreds of soldiers. So they're a slow burn game. You're investing in your world, whatever it might be. And we've done Egypt and Titanic and Air Force and Army bases, things like that. So do have a look at it. We've got one called Idle Golf Tycoon at the moment, which is doing well as well.
No, I'm going to have a definitely look at that, because I was looking on your website, going through all the different games. And I must admit, I just love the flick football. I know it's one of your older games, your first game, isn't it?
Yeah, it was. We did that in my kitchen at home. So you just never know. But yeah, they're all free. So go to Neon Play on your app store, and you can have a look at some of them. Okay.
And are you recruiting as well?
We are recruiting, interviewing some good people at the moment. But the challenge, as I said, is just the salaries that these guys are wanting. It's just like sometimes you can't justify it, and so you just say no. I'm sorry, it's not worth it.
Do you still go to universities and work with colleges? And
yeah, we do. We went to the University of Gloucestershire, their end of year show the other day, and we've been trying to work with the university for the last 10 years to find the sort of talent of the future, and we do work experience and placements. And in fact, Tom, who did that game, he ended up working for us for 3 or 4 years. So we love working with the local university, and we try to shape the course so they know what real employers want, the skills and the software that they need for the skills of today.
No, absolutely fantastic. I'd like to invite you back to a big interview as well, if that's okay, Ollie. Right, let's go over to you then, Tim. Tim, I talked to you just after you launched your strategic plan for the Forest of Dean strategic plan. It's now gone through council, hasn't it? Do you just want to explain to the rest of the panel, please, what it is?
Oh, well, the local plan it's the main document all councils and all planning authorities have to come up with every so often. And it will actually dictate the planning and regeneration for the district for the next 25, 30 years. You know, we got to 2041, I believe, with this particular document, hopefully starting in 2024. And we've talked this time long and hard. We've struggled in the Forest of Dean for the last 2 plans, as far as I can remember, to actually get the housing numbers delivered in the numbers there was. You know, developers some say quite rightly will claim viability issues and what have you. So we end up with sites not being developed out, or we don't get the number of affordable housing. So what I wanted to do this summer, what we want to do as a council, is do something quite different. And I'm absolutely convinced that the right way to get housing delivered is to get the community to lead on that housing. Houses are like, everybody knows we need them and everybody wants them for whoever, but as long as they're nowhere near them. We all have to accept that at some point, we got to deliver 7,000 houses in the Forest of Dean. There's going to be some houses in some places that we might not like them to be. That's just a simple fact. You can't, there aren't that many brownfield sites that we can put 7,000 houses in. So once we get that across, what I want to do then is to get them to say, well, okay, if you're going to take these small number of houses, villages, and little places, what's the payoff? What do you need? What kind of developer give you to get those houses so you can have that conversation and start that conversation? Because nobody wants to spend 2 years in court battling over a plan application. But then the bigger picture is that will only count for so many houses, but we do need to deliver a large number. Now, a couple of years ago, we were going down the route with single settlement. That didn't find favour with many of the parish councils or anything like that. So what we've thought about is actually Lydney. And what we want to do is create Lydney into, as you referred to earlier, a true gateway into the Forest of Dean. It's got a train station. It's got a bus station. It's already receiving quite a lot of growth with businesses coming in. And we think that we can really develop on that. There's a lot of stuff going on around the harbour, and Richard Cook's development and all that kind of stuff. And we think that we can really invest and put a lot of houses, yes, but also bring a lot of investment and infrastructure. And it does need some replacement infrastructure because they've missed out on the past. And we think that's a really good way of presenting our housing numbers, but also increasing and improving everything around Lydney and therefore the rest of the forest. If we can do that, then that's when I can go to Ruth, Western Gateway, and say, look, what we're doing here at Lydney, can we look at bigger infrastructure? Can we look at another bridge? Can we look at a bypass? Can we look at that kind of thing? But we need to get that initial redevelopment, regeneration done first and agreed first. And I'm glad to say that last night, after a bit of a battle, it got through council.
As an independent, how do you gel everything? I know it's too big a question here, but it's an important one. You've got to keep everybody on board. It must be extremely difficult.
It is now because there's elections next May, and I'm going to say it, the parties are already in election mode. Everybody wants to kick the Greens. The Greens want to make a name for themselves. That's just where we are. But you could only just be honest with people and be straight with people and hope that they follow it through. And that's all we can do. That's all we do. Last night, there was a lot of bluster and a lot of talk about, you won't get the infrastructure, you won't do that. But in the end, nearly everybody voted for it. What's the alternative? The people are saying, oh, we should go for a new settlement. Fine, come up with a location then that people will be happy with, because there isn't one. So we need to do what we can do.
I know everybody watching this, get over to the Forest of Dean. Actually, some of the towns and villages there and Lydney, there's some great shops, some great businesses, and they create some stuff. That's what I always love about Punchline. We get out there and see everything. It really is
there's huge opportunities here, Mark, and you're absolutely right. And I'll put that call out to businesses. I'm going to need some help during this consultation period, because I need to prove that we can do the stuff that I said we're going to do. And I need interest from business, and I need interest from developers. So I'm going to have to be talking to all of them over the next 3 months.
Well, but Tim, you're absolutely right. You do on these things need to work in partnership. That's the key thing. You need to bring business, local authorities, education together.
Absolutely.
And you're so powerful as a united unit in a way that you aren't from each faction talking independently. And that's the key raison d'etre, if you like, of the local enterprise partnership. It's bringing everything together so you make things happen, so you speak with one voice. Same for the Western Gateway. That's why the northern powerhouse and the middle engine have been so strong. It's because they talk about it behind the scenes, but then they go out with one voice to the public and to the government, and that's really, really powerful.
Yeah, it's like with our, we need an improved public transport system in the Forest. We need an improved train service. We're not going to get that by writing nasty letters to the train companies. We're going to get it by putting more people there, giving them an opportunity to get more business and to make a few extra quid if they put these services on. That's how we'll get it.
Evidence-based applications, that's the key.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks ever so much for that. Stuart, let's go over to you, please, because some of the work that you're doing at the moment with the walking football, can you tell us a little bit more about it, please? What is exactly walking football?
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I fell into walking football, as many people did, difficult time in my life, made redundant from a school I'd been working at for 32 years, had a hip operation, thought that my sporting days would be over. And then I discovered walking football and the opportunity to go out there and kick a ball around and have fun and have banter. And that's how most people have discovered the sport again. It's something that they've loved doing in the past. A lot of people have never played before, but come along because of the fun and the banter that they have. Sport's been around for just over 10 years now, and it's grown. As I said before, 140,000 people in England, played in over 60 countries around the world. I've been so lucky, real pinch yourself moment to actually say I'm an England manager. I was a deputy head at a school and a teacher all my life. To be manager of a national team, it's bonkers. And what it's doing is it's providing people with opportunities that they never thought they would have, whether that's just playing football again or not. Women's game has grown massively. We've now got England teams. We've now got 8 England teams. We've got over 40s, 50s and 60s women. We've got over 50, 60, 65, 70, 75 men. And we've just picked the first ever, we think this is a world's first, the first ever Parkinson's walking football team for England. And that's what I just like to briefly mention. About a year ago, I met a guy, I was asked to do a We Are Undefeatable virtual walking football team through lockdown. How can you play virtual walking football? Well, we just had a bit of fun, really, and I sent these guys some activities to do, and we became a real close-knit support group for each other. And one of the guys, Paul Nichols, had Parkinson's in his 50s, and he sent me this video, which I actually thought was a Mickey take to start with, of how he shuffles very badly until he comes to a football, and then it's like it's like a magic trick. He suddenly can run with a football at his feet. And he said, it makes me feel normal. And we thought there was something in that. And we decided that we would go on a mission to try and get walking football for Parkinson's people spread around the country. In the last year, we've now opened 14 or 15 clubs around the country for people with impairments. And the biggest impairment is Parkinson's. Back in March, we held a national cup for people with Parkinson's. We had 100 people with Parkinson's playing in a national cup, again, a world's first. And about 3 weeks ago, we had trials for England Parkinson's. And I cannot tell you the pleasure it gives me to see the impact on these people's lives. You get people who turn up in wheelchairs and walking sticks, people who walk backwards because they can walk backwards quicker than they can walk forwards. And they get onto a pitch and they put a ball in front of them and they transform. It is transforming their lives. It's like magic. It's something that I can't really put into words. But this game of walking football is changing people's lives. I think it's saving people's lives. We've got a session going now at Abbeymead Rovers. We've started an impairment session there. We've got 5 guys with Parkinson's, 2 with dementia, 2 recovering from strokes, a whole heap of guys who've got injuries who want to try and get themselves fit again in a safe environment. It's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. It's such good fun. It's so inclusive. It's so diverse. A lot of people not walking football because they saw the Barclays advert of a bunch of 80-year-olds wandering around a pitch. It's not. It doesn't have to be like that. It's a fun game. It's an inclusive game. It's changing people's lives. So get involved. It's brilliant. It's changed my life, and it's what it's doing for people is fantastic.
How do you get involved, Stuart?
If you go onto the Walking Football Association website, there's a Find a Club page on there. To be honest, if you just go onto Google and put in walking football near Lydney, walking football near Cheltenham, it'll come up with your walking football clubs. We're actually, Abbeymead Rovers are going down to Lydney soon. There's a new session that started up at the school down there, and we're going down to play them in a friendly so that they can see where they are in terms of, are they ready to enter leagues and things like that. What's brilliant about it is it's great at every level. Grassroots is obviously really important. and probably about 70% of people play just for fun, which is what it's all about. It's that fun, it's that banter. But if you want to play at a high level, there are higher levels now where you can play. We've just gone into partnership with Transplant Walking Football as well. So we've got Parkinson's, we've got impairment, we've got transplant. Where this goes, no one knows. It's just growing so fast. Brilliant.
No, fantastic, mate. You do a great job. Hopefully, your contact with Tim might be able to get down there and watch a game, or see you down there in Lindley. You should tie up, maybe. Hopefully.
Can I just say, Mark, it's entirely voluntary. That's the biggest challenge we faced. Is it's entirely voluntary. I'm off to Northampton tomorrow to run a 60s regional tournament, and I went to Bristol yesterday to referee an over 75s England game. I don't even get petrol expenses. There's not the money there. We need more sponsorship in, and you were very kind at Punchline to sponsor a kit for the Southwest, which they'll be wearing tomorrow at this regional tournament. Oh. We've just got a lovely deal with Pharmacy TU, which is going to help. We've got a lovely deal with a company called KP, but we need more money coming into it, and the more we can do things like this and to raise the profile of the sport, the more people will take it seriously.
Well, we'll sponsor it again, mate. Anyway, it goes without saying. We'll have a chat afterwards, okay?
Brilliant.
Okay, well, thanks ever so much for that absolutely amazing job. Please keep it up, Stuart. It goes without saying. You are transforming lives. Okay, let's just quickly, what's caught your eye this week's Punchline? We are massively over time, but hey ho, who cares? Right, let's start with you, Ruth. What have you picked out this week's Punchline?
Well, I've picked up your story about Zero Avia. Our inward investment, is at the air show this week. Oh, some sort of interference.
Yeah, I tell you what, we'll just go over to Ollie. If you could just twiddle with your stuff there. Ollie, what's the story you picked out at lunchtime?
This is a great story. So Currys are launching in-store racing car simulators. And I love this because we know how hard it is for retailers at the moment to get people, because you can buy everything online, often cheaper. And so they've done a deal with Gwilliam's Formula One team to put racing simulators in 52 stores, and then customers can go in there, do laps around the virtual circuit, and then the fastest racers in stores will win prizes. But then the final will be at the Williams Esports Lounge, and then they'll win some Formula One experiences. But also they'll uncover the hidden esports talent, which is massive now. Esports, absolutely huge. But what I love is that Currys benefit, because it's a really clever idea to get people in the store. You have to go in stores to do these esports experiences. It's probably driving younger people than would traditionally go to Currys, because it's for people who are on their PlayStation or Xbox normally. And then Williams also win because it promotes their esports, but they also find potential esports stars of the future. So I think it's a really clever win-win situation, and more retailers need to think, what partnerships could they do to drive people in store that you couldn't get online, which is hard, but it's obviously doable with some good thinking.
Yeah, no, totally. Great story. Thanks so much. Tim, what's caught your eye in this week's Punchline?
Well, actually, I'm across with Ollie because I had exactly the same story. from a slightly different point of view, because obviously we've done a lot of work trying to boost our town centres and all that since COVID. But Ollie's absolutely right. Currys have pulled great here, because what they're doing is they're bringing customers into their stores for perhaps another reason. The chances are they'll buy something when they're in there, maybe, and stuff like that. I mean, I can, a trip to Currys when I was a lad used to be a treat anyway. If you remember, it was brilliant. But I think certainly in the Forest of Dean, our town centre stores can learn a lot from this. And I think in Colford they're certainly doing it, and I know the one street in particular, they're making going to their shops almost an event. And I really want to see a day when the Forest of Dean, when the butchers allow people to try making sausages that they can take home and stuff like that. And that's the type of thing that will keep the town centres and the retail market in that they're really buzzing. Make going to their stores an event, and I think it would be a success. And I think that's what Currys are trying to do on a much bigger scale, of course.
In Tewkesbury, at the chocolate shop, you can do that. You can go and make chocolate at the chocolate shop. It's great.
I think that's fantastic.
I'm not sure about making your own sausages, but there we go. Thanks so much to Tim. Stuart, what have you picked out for us, please?
College celebrates 5 million T-level building with ceremony. Cirencester College opening the T-level. I'm going to get on my high horse here as a teacher. You cannot judge every single young person on how they do in a 2-hour exam. There is no one size fits all for education. I'm a great believer in continual assessment. Not everyone is brilliant at exams. Not everyone learns the same way. It's brilliant that T-levels, they're going to replace BTECs. I'm a big fan of BTECs as long as they're done properly. Students learn in different ways. The opportunity to learn as you go, to pick up assessment points as you go along, to have different ways of being assessed rather than just turning up and being able to regurgitate a load of stuff that you've learned in a 1-2 hour paper. Brilliant news. My son has just started lecturing at Cirencester College in sport. It's a great place. It's great news. Well done them.
No, great principle.
Again, just to add, that's right next door to the new Digital Skills Centre at Cirencester College. So there's the T-levels and the digital skills right next to each other. Absolutely fabulous in terms of the offering for young people.
Ollie?
Yeah, so we actually were one of the test ones for the Cirencester College. We had a student here doing a T-level. I totally agree, Stuart. It's just brilliant. It makes complete sense, and you're assimilating knowledge by being in an office and picking up your assessment point, and it's the way forward. And I think exams, they need to totally relook at the whole curriculum and how they test students. It's archaic, to be honest.
Okay, Ruth, last thing, what have you picked out this week's punchline? So we'll try again.
Earlier, I don't know about what went wrong, but anyway, Zero Avia at the Farnborough Air Show. The G1st LEP inward investment team is there with them because actually they attracted Zero Avia into Gloucestershire. They're based at Cotswold Airport, but their offering is, if it works, it's going to be absolutely fantastic. And they're hoping to start retrofitting aircraft in 2024. So it's actually really close that it could happen. And United Airlines is one of their backers, and they have already contracted to retrofit 50 of their existing big aircraft with the hydrogen engines that Zero Avia are producing. I mean, if we can have air flight without carbon, which is what they're looking to achieve and looking very close to achieving, that is just fantastic news for the world. And
it's right here on our doorstep. Absolutely
Indeed.
Amazing. I've got to wrap up the story that caught my eye, all those that you've just said as well, but it was the former Fab and Faded vintage shop on Worcester Street is now up for development. It's one of those grotty sort of corner units. It's another step in the right direction. They can knock that down, regenerate that corner, and that's really what's happening in Gloucester at the moment. That's all we've got time for. I'd just like to thank a big thanks to my fantastic guest today. Also a huge appreciation and thanks to Hazelwood's accountants and business advisors. Thanks for joining Punchline Talks. If you like the show, please like, share and subscribe. We'll see you again next week. Thanks everybody. Bye.
Cheerio.
See ya.